Hi everyone, hope you're all keeping as well as you can be. And this is a video I really didn't want to make. I was resisting. And then I saw a post on Facebook today by a very long term activist. This is about James Aspey. And it was a cry from the heart. This activist has been decades. She's been doing subbing and tons of other stuff. And she just put a long post about the latest James Aspey thing, the adventures in Bali with the puppy that was saved or not saved, and then the flight to Panama, to get involved in some cryptocurrency. I don't understand what's going on, green energy thing. Anyway, I just thought, you know what? I've got to get involved because this all ties in with the whole neoliberal project. Aspey and people like him, those sort of like YouTube famous influencers, they are all part of the whole neoliberal phenomenon, the neoliberal project, which is, I think, totally destroying real vegan activism. Okay. And this whole latest little escapade, the entrepreneur activist, I don't even know how you say it, it just seems to make it even more pronounced. He's asking for yet more money. So, what's the connection? What is a sock puppet and what is Astro-Turfing? So these are terms that are sort of used by progressives to talk about basically if, say, corporate industries as part of a PR sort of initiative, greenwashing basically, or vegan washing, they will often set up so-called activist groups and they'll be funded to put out a very sort of like corporate friendly message of this is what we're doing. And that's the astroturfing. So it's the opposite of grassroots. So the sock puppet is like it's meant to be like a real activist, but really they're just sock puppets. So I'm not saying that Aspey is one. I'm just saying let's consider the possibility of some of these influencers. Let's just look at what's going on with their so-called activism and what they actually do. And I also read, linked to this friend's post, a piece by the Vegan Police, who look amazing. They're Australia based, talking about similar sort of stuff about, in fact, influencers, Insta and YouTube famous influencers. And the reasons that why they might be either overtly or covertly part of the neoliberal paradigm, part of the neoliberal project, and actually actively working against animal liberation and animal rights. And this is the absolutely gutting thing. If these people are sincere and they're actually, but the end result is that they're working against animal liberation, it's tragic. And especially it's tragic for all the people that punting shed loads of money, six-figure sums to promote their work. So why might this be a sock puppet / astroturfing exercises? The likes of these influencers never promote self-education. And I've noticed this personally in a lot of my dealings with particularly the more recent vegans who call themselves activists. The concept that they might actually educate themselves about anything vegan or non-vegan, like related, for example, Black rights or women's rights or any kind of activism like that. Any sort of like intellectual activism or how we might organise and strategize, read anything at all, educate yourself on YouTube. It's just nowhere. It's just nowhere. The thing is, you're not active unless you're standing outside a slaughterhouse or you're standing in a public arena holding your sort of like laptop and having fairly confrontational conversation with members of the public. Hello, we're all members of the public. We're all members of the public. Let's try and keep a bit of respect about that, okay? So is that the only form of activism? Seriously, give me a break. Come on. This is not real activism. And why do they all take themselves so seriously? And they're certainly not up for discussion. I've had some run-ins, as some of you will know, with these kind of people, on YouTube. And there's no sense of wanting to learn. There's only a sense of defending their position. There's no sense of interest in what the other person's position might be or reading a book. Why not? Part of this lack of intellectual, lack of any sort of like desire to learn, that is part of the neoliberal project as well. Neoliberalism is absolutely against the notion of learning and, you know, finding out about stuff. Because the last thing that the neoliberal organisers, the great corporates, the horrific corporates, want us to do is to be educated. Of course they don't. Back to Aspey, and that's enough. It's enough. Now you can sit at home and watch the lovely videos that they do. Maybe you're going to contribute, get more people to contribute to their Patreon accounts. It's enough, isn't it? So you don't have to do any more activism. And that's another reason, I think, why people are so like, if you critique or criticize these so-called influencers, people go mental. You know, the vitriol spills out. And that is because they have incorporated their activism has become embodied in these other influencers. So they feel like it's a personal attack rather than thinking, well, maybe there's something in that. No, they think, oh, I'm being attacked because they're attacking James Aspey or Earthling Ed or Joey Cobstrong. And that's like me. They don't think of it that way, but that's how they respond. So that's another reason, I think. This is sort of like, is this sock puppet an Astro-Turfing or is it genuine activism? Another thing that I found, which again is highlighted in this article by the Vegan Police, hi darling, is the resistance. And again, it's like really heavy resistance, not just sort of token resistance, but really strong, heavy resistance to any critique of structural oppressions within the movement. Hello, we're talking about racism, sexism, ageism, ableism, anti-gay, etc., all those isms. There is a massive resistance, from the For the Animals, We're a Voice for the Voiceless Brigade. There is a massive resistance. Again, they don't want to talk about it. All they want to do is bang on incorrectly about intersectionals and how bad intersectionals are. Okay. Rather than examine how their own behaviour and how structural oppressions, a key part of the neoliberal project, are keeping everyone, every animal, every human animal down and dividing us all. So again, they just want to be single issue, as it were. This thing of all the money going to the activists, again, it's doubly toxic. The activists are supported by their Patreons, by their venture capitalist mates who come out from nowhere. How convenient is this? For their reformist sort of visions. Because they're never going to be abolitionists, are they? They're just never, ever going to be abolitionists. No, they aren't. They're all reformists. But that money that goes to the big influencers is not going to smaller groups like SABs or like anyone else that's grassroots. There's a great one that I've come across called Life After Hummus that works in communities. There are tons of them, absolutely tons of them. Animal sanctuaries, absolutely tons. But that money is all being siphoned into the massive pockets of these influencers who have no responsibility, legal or it would seem to be moral, to explain where that money's gone to. So how can that be right? I mean, it just beggars belief as well. And the other thing that these influencers don't do, I mean, there's always this really kind of confrontational sort of like interaction that happens, it's very stagey. It's always like good vegan, bad member of the public, or bad farmer. It's always no. And that's all that drama, rather than building anything at all. Yes, I get that it can give you the dopamine hit, but really, is that what activism is all about? Why don't people get the dopamine hit? By doing some actual real activism that requires real organising. and perhaps real risk as well, which is then you'd be building solidarity. And I certainly found that for me, it was very educational talking to Louise Ryan the other day, who's again had a lifetime of animal activism. And when she was talking about the first time that she was arrested as, I think, a 19-year-old young woman, and basically spent a night or a couple of nights in the cells with another 42 activists for an action they did at, I think it was Boots Laboratory, how formative that actually was, and the solidarity and sisterhood that came out. And that video is going up on Friday. But it really made me think about that compared with what I found to be, in many cases, a very toxic culture amongst vegans. Not all vegans, but a certain tranche of vegans. As I said, it tends to be the sort of like voices for the voiceless, we are for the animals brigade, which is a distinct group of vegans. And there's no sort of like notion of solidarity. There's no notion of the struggle, because they're not struggling, aren't they? Because they're all kind of quite happy. They're sort of like living their normal lives, living their best lives, and getting a bit of money from their Patreon accounts if they've got YouTube channels, or maybe they'll be donating to their favourite sort of like for the animals YouTubers or whatever, so they can do some proxy activism. Anyway, so these are my thoughts on the connections between neoliberalism, the neoliberal project, and these celebrity influencers. And it was all brought to a head, as I said, by this cry from the heart from my friend on her Facebook page. I did ask her to sort of like if she wanted to come and do this with me, do a Zoom call, and she may, but I had to get the stuff done for today. So I think these are really important questions that we need to be discussing within the vegan community as much as we can. Because otherwise the whole vegan movement is just either going to turn into a 100% like reformist setup. And how great is that? No, not at all. Or it's just going to sort of like become even more toxic. And these celebrity influencers are doing nothing to help. They are basically the sock puppets, whether they are actually paid by corporates or not paid by corporates. If you're getting money from venture capitalists, where do you think that money comes from? Where do you think it comes from? It's not coming from a little piggy bank, is it? It's coming from their, numerous business interests. So, as I said, I was a bit triggered. I didn't want to do this video. I've been reading a nice academic book about neoliberalism, and I was trying to think about what I should be doing today. So then when I saw my friend's Facebook post, I thought, this is it. So I'd be really interested to know what you think. This whole sort of like neoliberalism thing, promoting the so-called influencers and being really toxic for the vegan movement. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Love to have some conversations. In the meantime, stay safe, stay warm. It's quite cold at the moment. And remember that together we can organise to stop the war on other animals. Please like and subscribe if you want to like and subscribe. Have a great day. Stay safe. Peace.